We have already discussed the tragic fate of Rhaenyra's 3 eldest sons, whose father was officially considered Aeon Velaryon, though unofficially it was likely Sir Harwin Strong. All 3 of Rhaenyra's eldest sons met tragic ends. They all perished during the Civil War, in which their mother clashed with their uncle, Aegon II. The first died in a naval battle, the second was killed by their other uncle, Aemond, and the third fell from his mother's dragon and died. However, Rhaenyra still had 2 sons left, born in her second marriage to her uncle, Daemon Targaryen. The boys were named Aegon, often referred to as Aegon the Younger to avoid confusion with Aegon II, who had taken the throne, and Viseris, named after their grandfather. These 2 sons of Rhaenyra lived much longer than their older brothers. However, their lives were no less tragic. What became of Rhaenyra's younger sons, and did any of them manage to claim the Iron Throne? That's what we'll talk about in this video. Enjoy watching. Aegon III. How he survived the Civil War, and why he was nicknamed the Dragonbane. When the Dance of the Dragons broke out, Aegon the Younger was still very young. He had just turned 9. Jacaerys Velaryon decided to ensure the safety of his younger half-brothers, Aegon and Viserys, and arranged for them to wait out the war in the free city of Pentos. The Velaryons, who were allies of Rhaenyra, outfitted a small fleet of 7 ships to take the boys to Pentos. However, on the way, they were attacked by enemies. The younger brother, Viserys, disappeared during the attack and was presumed dead. Aegon managed to survive by grabbing onto the neck of his young dragon, Stormcloud. It was his first ever flight, and the boy was terrified. The dragon carried him to Dragonstone, but soon died from its wounds. In the subsequent events, Aegon played a passive role, merely as a witness to the horrifying events. When Rhaenyra took the capital, she summoned her son to her, but soon after a riot broke out in the city, and Rhaenyra and Aegon were forced to flee. By that time, she believed him to be her last living child, and kept him close at all times. However, when Rhaenyra and Aegon reached Dragonstone, they were met with an unpleasant surprise. Their sworn enemy, Aegon II, Aegon the Younger's uncle, was waiting for them. Aegon II ordered Rhaenyra's men to be killed and then fed her to his own dragon. All of this happened before Aegon the Younger's eyes, who watched in horror as his beloved mother was brutally killed. The boy himself was spared, to be used as leverage against his mother's supporters, but was thrown into a damp dungeon. Some time later, Aegon II also died, since he had no surviving heirs. All of his sons were dead. The throne logically passed to Aegon the Younger. The boy was freed and became the 3rd king of his name, Aegon III. How Aegon III was manipulated by adult lords. The king was too young, so a regency council was appointed to help him rule. Some of the regents genuinely cared about the king's well-being and helped him. For example, Corlys Velaryon and Cregan Stark. However, Corlys soon passed away, and Cregan left the capital almost immediately after restoring order and punishing those responsible for the previous king's death. Other regents were not as honorable. The most influential at different times were Tywin Lannister and Unwin Peake. They held the position of Hand of the King and, using their office, strengthened their personal power and wealth. Shortly after the Dance of the Dragons, Aegon III was married to the daughter of Aegon II to reconcile the 2 warring branches of the Targaryens. However, the girl soon died by throwing herself out of a window, and a new bride was sought for the king. Eventually, at the age of 14, Aegon chose 6-year-old Rhaenyra Velaryon, which greatly angered Unwin Peake, who wanted the king to choose an older girl and produce an heir as soon as possible. But at this point, Aegon finally began to assert his own will, making it clear to the regents that he would rule on his own from then on. Reunion with his lost brother, the birth of children, and early death. Aegon III's life was far from happy. He had endured too many shocks at a very young age, and many believed that it had broken him. He was reclusive, sullen, and melancholic, preferring to spend most of his time in solitude. However, one happy event did bring some life back to the king. A few years after the Dance of the Dragons, it was revealed that his younger brother, Viserys, long thought dead, was actually alive and held captive in the Free Cities. Lord Aegon Velaryon, after visiting the area, negotiated the terms of the prince's release. These terms involved a hefty ransom and the requirement for Viserys to marry the daughter of the noble Rhaenyra family from Lys. However, the king was not deterred by these sacrifices. He was overjoyed at the prospect of being reunited with his beloved brother. Viserys eventually returned to Westeros, and Aegon appointed him as his Hand of the King. From then on, the brothers ruled together. Aegon relied heavily on his brother, and Viserys sincerely served his interests and was a reliable support. 10 years after his wedding, Aegon finally consummated his marriage with his wife once she turned 16. In the following years, they had 5 children, 2 sons and 3 daughters. Due to the traumas of his childhood, Aegon became an atypical Targaryen. Unlike his ancestors, he hated and feared dragons. Most of these creatures had perished during the Civil War, and during Aegon III's reign, only 1 dragon was born. However, it grew weak and sickly and soon died. Many whispered that it was the king himself who had ordered its death, as he did not wish for the dragons to return. This is why he earned the nickname Dragonbane, as it was during his reign that the Targaryens lost their dragons. Although, later on, he did attempt to bring them back and even invited sorcerers from Essos to awaken the remaining dragon eggs. This did not succeed. Aegon III himself did not live long. At the age of 36, he died of a fever, and the throne passed to his eldest son. As for his brother, Viserys, he remained alive and would go on to have a rather interesting fate. Viserys, the Lost Prince and Eternal Hand, who eventually reached the throne. When Viserys was a child, he fell into the hands of the Triarchy, a coalition of 3 free cities that fought on the side of his uncle, Aegon II. Viserys was captured by Admiral Shirako Lohar and taken to Lys, where he became his prisoner. However, soon the admiral fell out of favor and sold Viserys to another noble lord of Lys, Magister Bambaro Bazan. Viserys lived there for several years, receiving a good education and wanting for nothing, but he remained a prisoner. Eventually, misfortune struck Bambaro Bazan as well. He was killed, and his assets were confiscated. After that, Viserys came into the possession of Lysandro Roger, a banker. Upon discovering that the boy was a Targaryen prince, Lysandro married him to his daughter to forge ties with the royal family. When Aegon III finally ascended the Iron Throne, banker Roger sent a message to Aelin Velaryon, informing him that the king's brother was alive and residing in Lys. Aelin went to retrieve the prince and accepted all of Roger's terms without negotiation. These conditions were highly unfavorable and included, for example, transferring part of the royal treasury from the Iron Bank to the Roger Bank. Nevertheless, Aelin agreed, and Viserys was able to return home. Viserys became a loyal ally to his brother and proved to be very effective as Hand of the King. He demonstrated himself as a talented statesman, promoting various laws aimed at improving the state of the kingdom. When Aegon III died, Viserys remained hand under his son, the new king Daeron I, known as the Young Dragon. Daeron was hot-headed and warlike, spending most of his time in military campaigns, attempting to conquer Dorne. During this time, Viserys effectively governed the realm and did so quite well. Daeron soon perished in the war, and his younger brother, Baelor I, ascended the throne. This king, in contrast, was overly peace-loving and devout. Baelor was more of a prophet than a ruler, seeking to convert all of Westeros to the faith of the Seven. The North and the Iron Islands worshipped their own gods. Thus, the burden of governing the kingdom fell once again on Viserys, while Baelor was preoccupied with preaching and prayer. Viserys II, king and ancestor of Daenerys. But Baelor eventually died as well, leaving no heirs, and so Viserys finally ascended the throne. By then, he was an experienced and wise ruler, making him the most logical candidate for the crown. This period promised to be a new golden age for the Seven Kingdoms. Viseris II implemented several important reforms that strengthened the realm. However, just a year after his coronation, Viseris II died from an unknown illness. His son, Aegon IV, succeeded him, and many later whispered that it was he who poisoned his father to seize the throne more quickly. Nevertheless, the dynasty continued, and all subsequent Targaryen kings traced their lineage back to Viserys, Rhaenyra's younger son. One of his descendants was Daenerys from Game of Thrones. So, although Rhaenyra perished in the Civil War, in a way she won, as it was her descendants who retained power. That's all for now. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Your engagement is the best reward for me. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.